afternoon, folks. This is your host, Anthony Dobbs, coming at you. See this? Now, remember tax cheat Tim Geithner. Tim Geithner, the Secretary of the Treasury. And you remember the big thing about him was that he failed to pay about $30-some thousand in taxes. He claimed that this was a mistake because, he used TurboTax, so he really shouldn't be culpable for that mistake. And of course, he got a pass, claiming that it wasn't his fault. It was actually the fault of the tax software that he used. Now, it's funny that this guy's supposed to be the smartest financial mind in the world. Remember when he was getting confirmed, they were talking about he's the only one who understands TARP, and TARP is a disaster, by the way. He's the only one who understands TARP. He's the only guy for the job. He's the only one in the world. And apparently this guy who's the only one in the world didn't understand how to fill out TurboTax. So you be the judge of that. But anyway, why I bring that up today is because someone tried to use the Geithner TurboTax defense. Not kidding you. Listen to this. August 26th, tax court rejects taxpayers' attempt to use Geithner's TurboTax defense. Tax court yesterday rejected a taxpayer's attempt to use the TurboTax defense successfully employed by Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner. Hobson versus Commissioner. Petitioners, and this is what the court said, petitioners have not met their burden of persuasion with respect to reasonable cause, and good faith. Mr. Hobson admitted that he received both Forms 1099-R for the distributions and that he knew they constituted income. What they were saying was that this was on him, that he knew that he was getting specific income and a specific amount of income that was taxable, and that regardless of whether he claims that the software made a mistake or the software wasn't adequate for his tax return, it's his problem. And that's what the court actually ruled. Now, if you remember, Geithner's defense was that he was not aware. Or no, Geithner's defense was he actually knew about the income but didn't know how to apply it to his TurboTax return. When the IMF, which he worked for, actually provides him with specific instructions that he must claim that income, because not only does he get this income, but then he gets reimbursed for the taxes that he's supposed to pay. So now he gets away with it, but then some guy tries to use the same TurboTax defense, and they say, nah, sorry, nice try, but that's not going to work for you. So this is what we have here now. We have a political class, and then we have everybody else. So how's that for hope and change? It's funny. That makes me think of something. I'm doing reading about Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, my favorite founder. Love Thomas Jefferson. Him and I would say Patrick Henry. Now, Thomas Jefferson, when he was in Paris, he talked about how the biggest difference between Europe and the United States at the time was that no matter who you were, whether you were rich, poor, somewhere in between, everybody had the same equal treatment under the law. And that's really what equality is all about. Equality is not that everybody has the same amount of money. Equality is not that, everybody deserves, if one person makes more money, then the government has to take it from them and give it and redistribute it. That's not equality. There will never be such a thing as economic equality. Because even if the government makes everybody poor, the people who run the government are still rich. And he said that the Europeans despise that about America. at the time. They despised the fact that everybody under the law was equal, because they come from a society where if you were of a certain class, or if you were of the aristocracy, then you got treated differently and the law applied to you differently. And that's really what good government is all about. Good government is making sure that that we are a society of laws and not a society of men. And now it seems like we are trying to turn that upside down. Now I want to know how that benefits anybody. Thomas Jefferson talked. I mean, he was just he was really he was almost professorial. He talked about lengthy legislation. In other words, bills that were too long, so that were designed to basically keep people from trying to read them. He talked about all that stuff. I mean, there's just so many things that they foresaw and that they knew. And really what it tells you is, one of the arguments that the progressives try to make is that this is so much more, it's just so much more a complex society than it was back then. And the fact of the matter is that's just not true. Just not true. Because if you read the writings of these men who designed our governmental structure, they realized, they recognized all of those things. They understood socialism before it had a name. Before it had the name, they used to call it the utopian schemes of leveling. They used to call that political leveling when socialism back then, because Karl Marx obviously had not been born yet. So, again, these guys weren't talking about anything new. These are the struggles of humanity throughout history since we've walked the earth. And they were in touch with that. They understood human nature. They understood that struggle for freedom. They understood that history, for the most part, has been oppression by the few on the many. And that's what they turned upside down with the revolution. They ensured that every person would get the same treatment under the law. They ensured that every person would have those same opportunities. They knew that they couldn't guarantee that everyone would succeed, but at least you have the opportunity to fail. And that's really what freedom is all about. That's what freedom is all about. The opportunity to succeed and the opportunities to fail. And the decisions that you make to go along in those paths. And how you recover from them. And how you adjust. And that's what these people who seek to promise that they'll somehow remove the fears of life. That's where the freedom lies. It is those things that build character. It's those things that enable you to become the best of who you could be. You see, eventually what happens in socialist system is that the populace is watered down. And what I mean, I don't mean that in a population sense. I mean that eventually the people who are the true thinkers, the people who will truly advance society, are condemned by the state. Because the state doesn't want you rocking the boat. The state wants the status quo. That's why I can't stand when these socialists and these Marxists get up in front of you and say, well, if you're against them, you just want the status quo. You, sir, are the one who promotes the status quo. Because the status quo is power for the state. I mean, historically, if you look at man's existence, that is the status quo. America, the United States of America, is, as it was founded, is the anti-status quo.